Hi, it's IFL3 here. So in this video I'm going to be reviewing the Lixada, I believe that's how you pronounce it, 650 titanium pot or mug. For comparison, I've got the Toaks 550 and also the 78Henstridge mini spirit burner. Now I've seen this called many other different names before, but they're all pretty much the same thing. I've had a spirit burner like this before. The wicking inside on this one seems a lot better, where the other one was more of a fiberglass. Now after this nice little bit of a walk, this little package could go together a little bit better, but it's small enough that you can put in a day sack, take with you for a nice little stroll out and about, bit of exploration, take to work for a nice quick coffee or tea, hot chocolate, whatever
tickles your fancy.
So they kind of sit on top of each other quite well. So to start with, this is the 78Henstridge mini spirit burner. It is £7.59 at the moment on Amazon. With the windshield that comes included in it, there's a couple of little tabs. Now this is where you're supposed to sit the burner on top of, but the gap between that and the top of the pot isn't very high, and the optimal rule of thumb is about 1 inch to 1.5 inches distance. So I've cut off these tabs and I've smoothed it down. I had to bend in the pot stand supports because they nearly went around the outside of the mug. They pretty much fit perfectly. As you can see from the burner, there's quite a little bit of room in there that they could have made that a little bit smaller, making it a little bit lighter, more compact. It's a little bit annoying really, because it would have nested really nicely inside the pot. Here's a little bit on the heavier side, just over 32 grams with the tabs removed. But this is a really lightweight pot stand. Talking of lightweight, this is the Red Bull chimney stove, and this is 6.21 grams, made from a Red Bull can. In comparison, the Trangia type is 53 grams. With the lid on, it's around 70 grams. With the pot stubber thing on top, and with the little bit of silicone matting around the outside to stop you burning your fingers, it's about 102 grams. This is the windshield that I've been using. It's just a bit of aluminium flashing you can get from B&Q. I've just put a couple of holes in this one, and the titanium one's got a few more holes in it. So this little bit of silicone mat I've had on a burner like this before, and it really does help protect your fingers because the burner actually does get quite hot. If you ever put the lid on and the stove is hot, it can be a bit of a pain just to get into, even if you put a bit of Vaseline on the seal. This is the same with all of them, I've noticed. It's to do with the hot air and gases contracting after expanding, being hot really. Creates quite a nice little tight seal. Now this flame adjuster is pretty much like the other one I had. I haven't actually had the need to test it. I've seen other people test them with the actual proper Trangia stove kits that you get. How this connects is kind of just like punched through and then stamped around the outside. So now we're moving on to the Lixada, I believe it's pronounced, 650ml in the grey pouch, and the Toaks 550ml in the orange pouch. And you can see that the material on the outside are pretty much generic, same sort of material. They're identically the same width, pretty much got the same bottom. The markings on the Lixada is actually a lot easier to read than the markings on the Toaks. They've got the same space interval of markings, but it's just a bit more of a bolder font on it, making it easier to read. Sometimes with the Toaks you've really got to get in and have a look at it. So on the Lixada, from the rim to the 500 mark, there's about 18 mils of extra space for if you was to mix in any dry food like couscous, anything to be rehydrated. Where on the Toaks at 500 there is only about 6 mils of gap, and this is kind of one of my biggest problems that I've had with the Toaks previously, is not having that extra space to stir around any food. The handles are pretty much both the same, kind of how they're attached is like a spot weld on, but the Lixada does actually have a slight bigger handle than the Toaks, and to me it just feels a little bit more comfortable in my hand. Now this is the real big surprise and moment here, is the actual lids. So the lid on the Toaks will fit on the Lixada, but the lid from the Lixada won't fit on the Toaks. And with the Lixada, it takes to around about 90 degrees before the lid actually comes off, and this really impressed me. I've done a few little tests just to see, and yeah, whether it will loosen up with time. The other thing, talking about the lid, is the Toaks lid never really, the little triangular handle grabber thing, never really shut flush to the base of the lid. It's all like left up by like 2 or 3 mils. Where on the Lixada it does fold flush down, and it's got a nice smooth operation to it. Now weighing these in, the Toaks is about 100 grams, where the Lixada is about 115 grams. Funnily enough, the Toaks 550 is £38.99. Lixada 650 is £28. So you're saving a tenner and getting 100 mils more capacity. And the really cheeky thing is, the Toaks actually say that their pot weighs in at 72 grams. This is true-ish without the lid. If you take the lid away, I think mine weighed in about 73, 74, possibly give an extra couple of grams for the carbon that's on it. Where the Lixada is pretty much true to their word. They say that their 650 weighs about 112 grams, and that's pretty much bang on to what mine weighs. Previously, before, when I've had a burner like this, I've put a bit of silicone mat around it. It helps with holding the burner when putting the lid on. But also I was wondering, because that silicone helps to trap the heat inside, will this help the bloom time? Will it bloom a lot quicker? I'm going to use 15 mils of fluid. Now, there isn't really much difference in the summertime around this heat. Maybe if I was outside in the cold in the winter time, and it's something I will test when it obviously gets cold, whether then it becomes beneficial. So I had this down at 1 minute 55 for bloom time. I can't exactly put my finger on what the other one was, but we'll bring up the graph now and we'll have a look.
Right before I couldn't pick this up because the heat of it, it's very, very hot in there, and I can pick that up. I can still feel the heat coming through. Oh yeah, a bit toasty.
So I've burned the stove out, I've let it all die down. I've read also on the internet that if you've got a dry stove, you put the fuel in it, and then if you flip it upside down and put it back down again, that will help increase the bloom time, because you're allowing the matting, the wick inside, to be absorbed quicker, so the fuel doesn't have to travel up it. Depending on the wick that you have, I suppose this might make a difference or it might not. I didn't really actually find it to make any difference at all. So I got it in about 205. So I noticed there's a little lip around the actual side of the burner, and I kind of had a little thought of, if I put majority of the 15 mils inside of the burner, but then just put a little bit around the outside and set a light to that, whether that will help heat it up and bring on a quicker bloom time. Again, it's completely burnt out. So about 5 seconds quicker. Whether you want to use, whether that's going to be beneficial for you to do, maybe if it's cold, it might help. So I tried it again and I got a bit more of a quicker result. This time I put a little bit more fluid around the outside for it to burn and heat up. And it came in about 1 minute 50 seconds. And just to show you, if you did want to empty out majority of the fuel in the burner, you can actually empty it out as long as you're careful and tip it into a little pot or something. So I just wanted to see with this test, if you had a mug or a pot on top, would that radiate the heat back down into the stove, making a quicker bloom time. This was a little bit more difficult to sort of judge, because I couldn't actually see whether the flame had actually fully bloomed. Bit more harder to tell on this one. I think what I'm going to have to do is wait for the winter time to come when it's really nice and cold outside, so we can see a bit more of a spread of difference. So stay tuned for that video. It's got to be doing something to it.
I can hear the fuel boiling now.
So the conclusion of this video is I'm going to use the Toaks 550 stove with the alcohol burner just as a sling in your bag cook set. I've also decided to put the windshield in with the burner. The Lixada stove I'm actually going to use from a lightweight kit. I built this for the Toaks out of reflective bubble wrap, but I think it will do well for the Lixada, and also it will allow this area up here to cool down. If I want the top to stay warm, the actual lid, I'll put a little bit of the silicone mat in over the top. This should then allow me to then drink without burning my lips too much. The reason I also want this one is because on a windy day, I know the pot lid is not going to come flying off. In here I can fit everything. I can fit a medicine pot for filling out how many millilitres of fuel I want. I can fit my backup fuel tablets, a lighter, my Red Bull stove, my pot stand, my windshield, my Esbit solid fuel stand, a little bit of silicone matting to put the Red Bull on top, and this little funny shape of silicone mat that acts as a bit of a handle grabber if the handle gets too warm. So to wrap up and for conclusion, I would buy this stove, the Lixada, over the Toaks stove, whether it's the 650 or any other bigger sizes, just purely because the lid fits really well on top of it. And although the original Trangier is going to be loved by Trangier diehard fans, this isn't too bad. You can fill it all the way up to probably about 90 or 100 mils of fuel and put the lid on, and then you don't have to carry around a separate fuel container, and it's all ready to go. But the more you do fill it up, like in my previous video, the longer the bloom time is and the longer the boil time. But all in all, it's not a bad, robust little stove. The wicking inside of it seems an upgrade compared to the fiberglass version that I had many years ago. I fell free, over and out.